Welcome to Decoding Devy, and I am Brandon Haye, and you can find me on Twitter at HayB3. And this podcast and stream video is brought to you by the IDP Guys. Make sure if you're on YouTube to go ahead and subscribe for all the great content that's there. And I'm so glad to come to you tonight with Matt Cooper, and you can find him on Twitter as it shows on the screen at Devy2DynastyFR. Matt, nice to have you.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it. Yeah, just excited to be here and talk some 2022 wide receiver prospects.
Definitely. And and I picked two of the interesting ones that you've done videos on your YouTube channel. So just tell us a little bit about, what you've kind of been working on and what we can look forward to in the near future.
Yeah, so I just started my YouTube channel back in October. So it's a pretty new channel. I've been excited. It's been growing a little bit. I've got about 260 some odd subs right now and just continuing to grow. Recently, I've been working my way through all the 2022 prospects leading up to draft season. I've got two of them done. So like you mentioned, Treylon Burks and Garrett Wilson, I've done film breakdowns on those guys and working on one now for Jameson Williams out of Alabama. So we'll be working our way through all the wide receivers, and then I want to get to the running backs and really just cover as many prospects as I can before draft season. So you can find that on YouTube at Devy2 Dynasty Film Room. Just search it in there. It'll come up. And just really excited to continue digging into these prospects leading up to draft season.
Yeah, I think you're doing the same exact thing I am because I think I'm the most intrigued and interested in the wide receivers. So that's where I started. I think I've done about 8 or 9. The funny thing is, for some reason, Jameson Williams totally slipped my mind over the weekend, so I have to go look at his film. I obviously saw him a lot this year, but I want to look more because he really only had that 1 year production. But yeah, doing those, then go into running backs, and lastly quarterbacks, because I think those are going to be the hardest to kind of figure out. So yeah, I think we're on the same wavelength there. And just from your videos and just kind of some of the stuff you put on the show sheet, I think we are in pretty good agreement about the two prospects we're going to go about tonight. But we could still go through all that. So we usually, with everything that's going on in college football with the transfer portal and everything, that's usually where I start. Every episode. So we'll start with that. So finally, Jackson Dart made a decision. He is going to Ole Miss. There seemed like there's a lot of places up in the air, but I think this is probably a great spot for him. He played 6 games last year. Had an okay year. Not great rushing the ball, so I don't know how much of what Matt Corral did this year at Ole Miss they'll do there. But Jackson Dart goes there, and actually, we won't bury the lead. Also, his tight end from USC, Michael Trigg, only played 4 games last year as a freshman, 7 catches, 109 yards, and a touchdown. But both of them go to Ole Miss, along with Zach Evans from TCU, because it looks like Lane Kiffin is just kind of reloading that offense. So, what do you kind of think, about Ole Miss and them just trying to reload with these transfer players?
Yeah, I think it's this is a big one, right? Jackson Dart has been a pretty big name in the portal, and he lands with Ole Miss, which he's with a high-powered offense and a coach who's cranked out a lot of NFL quarterbacks. And obviously, we saw what Matt Corral did this year and how his stock increased. So I think it's a good fit for Dart, and definitely I think increased his C2C. Devy, all of that stock, it's up for him with this landing spot. And, I haven't watched much of Michael Trigg, so I'll be really curious to see how that goes. But Dart, Trigg, and like you said, Zach Evans is a really big get for them too. So it should be a high-powered offense once again, and should be arrows pointing up for all these guys.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not gonna lie. Also, I don't know a whole lot about Trigg. I know he's a big receiver, and if anyone can figure out how to use all those weapons, it's Lane Kiffin. It's interesting now. Caleb Williams is still kind of up in the air, so we don't know what's going to happen at USC with Lincoln Riley going there. I will say with Jackson Dart leaving USC to go to Ole Miss, I think it might be better because we saw with Spencer Rattler kind of struggled at Oklahoma this year. I know Riley has good track record with quarterbacks, but you would think Lane Kiffin would get Dart in the right offense, and he's going to put up huge numbers in Ole Miss against this SEC defenses. So and he should have 2 years there. We'll see if Lane Kiffin stays the second year, but I think definitely it'll be interesting how the SEC kind of goes because it's definitely Georgia and Alabama, and then we don't really know who that third team is with Brian Kelly going to LSU and a lot of those other teams having new coaches.
Yeah, definitely. I think you nailed it. So.
And the last one, it's not a huge name. This probably is more on the college fantasy and CTC side. Taj Harris from Syracuse. Before this year I liked him, but then he decided to transfer. He transferred to Kentucky, and then I didn't know he was thinking about leaving Kentucky, but it's probably good for him. He goes to Rutgers, and their offense was pretty bad last year, but they have a new quarterback coming in that played a couple games last year. So he's just kind of an interesting name. I don't know if you know much about him, but he's kind of a quick player that probably they can get a lot of receptions to. I think it was a good move from him leaving Kentucky because it looks like Kentucky's brought in a ton of wide receivers in the offseason.
Yeah, he left Syracuse, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, Syracuse. So I actually had him on my college fantasy team this year, and obviously was disappointed. He gave me nothing, and then left the team halfway through the season. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. This feels like a little bit of a sideways move, right? Like one bad offense to another bad offense. So I'm not really sure what to make of this, but definitely was hoping Taj Harris could be a good player for my college fantasy team this year, and he wasn't. So we'll see if he can recoup some of that value.
Definitely seem a little. Syracuse was ball last year. They were great at running the ball with Sean Tucker and the Schrader. He was very inconsistent passing the ball. I did have hope when he went to Kentucky, but when Kentucky brought in all those wide receivers, very crowded. So I guess the positive would be, Rutgers is looking for anyone to, I checked out the stats for Rutgers last year. Their passing offense was terrible. So maybe anyway, but up, Shiana's there, so maybe he can get that kind of, going a little better. So there's that. So we'll move on to next. Whenever I have guests on, I try to talk about either where they're alumni from or some teams that they follow. So we got a couple of those for you. You're an NC State alumni, and then you live at Clemson, so you follow that team. So we'll go over the Wolfpack first. Devin Leary is actually someone I picked up in a college fantasy league, midway through the year because he was putting up very good numbers. As you see, he had 3,400 yards, 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. So what do you think about Devin Leary, not only at NC State, but do you think he has a chance to make a name in the NFL?
I think he could. NC State has cranked out quite a few NFL quarterbacks, from Phillip Rivers, Russell Wilson, more recently, guys that have been more backup quarterbacks like Mike Glennon and Jacoby Brissett. Even Ryan Finley, I think, is in the league somewhere as a backup right now. So, NC State's got a little bit of a tradition of that. And you can see the stats on screen. Leary had a rough freshman year coming in. It was kind of the transition. Finley had left. NC State was trying to figure out what's next at quarterback, and it was kind of thrown into the fire. I don't think he was ready. He was really looking good, though, his sophomore year before he had that major injury. Broke his arm, I believe. Missed most of his sophomore season. But he was off to a hot start, and then, came back this year, didn't miss a beat. You can see 35 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's got arm talent. He's obviously reading the defense a lot better. So, next year is going to be telling for him. He's lost his star left tackle. Ike Ekwonu is going to the NFL draft. He lost his top wide receiver, Mecca Emezi. And then the 2 running backs, Ricky Person and Zonovan Knight, are both gone as well. So that offense is going to look really different. And if he can carry them and even improve on this year and have, he could have that kind of Kenny Pickett level late riser, but he's got to take even what he did this year to another level next year, and we'll see if he can do that. NC State should be a contender for the Atlantic and for going to the ACC championship game, so could be a big year for him.
Yeah, definitely. So, in college fantasy and C2C, I was very high on Zonathan Knight, Bam Knight, and he definitely didn't have necessarily the year that I thought he would. And those first couple of games, they really ran the ball with him in person, and then it was kind of interesting because it seemed like then Leary kind of took off and was really they were throwing the ball quite a bit and being productive there. I think ACC now, we're about to talk about Clemson, but it seems like it's wide open. Who would have thought Pittsburgh would have taken it this year? And to that Kenny Pickett talk, I mean, the thing that Leary has over Pickett is at least there is that success, this great year. And even, his sophomore year, before he got hurt, whereas Pickett, that I can't wait to go more in depth on Pickett because my only thing with him is I don't remember a player that has had 3 mediocre years, started 4 years and then finally just have this monster year the 4th year. So, that'll be interesting. But yeah, definitely be interesting in the ACC. It seems kind of like it's a toss up for everyone, and there's some interesting quarterbacks like Leary, like Sam Hartman, those type of quarterbacks that are good college quarterbacks, but we'll have to see if they can kind of get that lift for the NFL next year.
Yeah, Jerkovic too. There's a bunch of them.
Oh yes, definitely. I forgot about him. Him coming back, that's huge. Him and Zay Flowers, because I thought Zay Flowers was going to definitely be in the draft this year. So he's not. So that's very interesting too. That they can pair up and really do some big things there. And then I asked you to just give me some players to watch out for. So they're on the screen if you just want to talk about them for a little bit.
Yeah, so Devin Carter, I mentioned Emeka Emezi was the Emezi, I don't know how you pronounce that name, even though I'm an NC State grad, I should know that. But Emeka Emezi, he's out the door. He was their top wide receiver, and Devin Carter was, I think, pretty clearly the number 2 guy, and he profiles as an alpha. He's 6'3" and 220 some odd pounds. He's fast. So he had some issues with drops this year, but a lot of talent, and he gets the chance to be the guy next year. So he's a guy who could see himself trend up based off of opportunity. And then these other 2 guys are running backs. Now, NC State seems to really like running a committee. That's kind of the thing with Bam Knight. Everybody wanted him to be the guy, but Ricky Person just wouldn't go away. But both of those guys are gone. It's a total empty backfield from the guys that pretty much saw all the action last year. So somebody's got to step into that. And Jordan Houston, I think, as far as guys that are on the roster, he's probably the next guy up. And he's fast. He's an electric little athlete, but he is little. I think he's 5'9" and under 200 pounds. So he's a little guy. And then Michael Allen is a little bit bigger. He's a 4-star freshman coming in. And so, there's nobody else really on the roster that I think is going to step into that opportunity. So I think it's probably going to be one of or both of these 2 guys stepping into that role, and we'll see how they do with it.
Yeah, that'll be interesting if with the lack of experience at the running back position, if they kind of come out, trying to depend on Leary and then just see what they have at running back. So that'll be interesting how they kind of start off the year. So, I think NC State seems to be an improving team. And, with Leary, I'm very interested to see how he does because in a lot of C2C leagues, he probably wasn't rostered. So he might be in some of those supplemental drafts that are coming up this year. And, I think it's interesting. We've seen that, Clemson really fell off this last year. Most people thought DJU, just plug them in and they're going to keep going. Since you live, around that area, I just want to get your, your perspective and what people kind of think, around there.
Yeah. So DJU is an interesting one. He looks like he was built in a lab to play quarterback, right? Like he's got all the size and pretty good mobility and great arm talent. And he performed really well when he was filling in for Trevor. But then for whatever reason this year, when he got the chance to be the guy, it just didn't click. Um, whether Clemson can look at this past year as just a bump in the road and then they're right back to dominating, or whether this is kind of the beginning of the end for their dynasty. I think a lot of that's going to fall on DJU's shoulders. And it's going to be interesting to see with a new offensive coordinator and another offseason to kind of work on his craft if he can bounce back. And if he can't, he might end up hitting the transfer portal because he's got a guy sitting behind him now, Cade Klubnik, who looked really good in the All-American Bowl. So he's a highly touted freshman coming in. And, if he keeps playing poorly, people are going to start clamoring for Klubnik to get a chance. And they're not happy around here. They got really used to winning, and they weren't happy with this year. And if it keeps going the way that it went last year, they're going to call for a change, specifically with DJU. So that'll be interesting.
Definitely. And, I know they still have Will Shipley that they used quite a bit. They like him. But obviously, if they want to get back to, where they want to be, the playoff, they're going to have to get that passing game. They're losing a couple of receivers, even though they weren't overly successful last year. They are bringing in Adam Randall, a 4-star, top about 110 wide receiver. So it'll be interesting if they can kind of get that going. And going back to DJU, one thing I thought was once, the poor game against Georgia, which is understandable because, Georgia's defense is great. I know that because I was actually at the Orange Bowl because I'm a Michigan fan. So I saw that defense just totally dominate. It is ridiculous, all the athletes they have, and they're still bringing back so many. But then when he struggled against lower competition, I think a lot of that probably got in his head. And I think the biggest thing for him is, going into the offseason, they just got to build his confidence up. Which it's going to be hard with Klubnik right behind him. So it's probably, going to be probably going to tell very early next year if he's going to be able to get out of this hole or not.
Yeah. And we'll see, if a guy like Adam Randall can step in and be the guy at wide receiver, it feels like something they were lacking a little bit this year. Clemson's got that storied history of, from Nuke Hopkins, Mike Williams, T. Higgins, all the way down the line. Like Sammy Watkins, even, who was, didn't work out as well as people hoped in the NFL, but was insane in college. This year, Ross was supposed to be kind of the incumbent to that. T. Higgins left and Ross was supposed to step in and be the guy. And I don't think he ever got fully healthy after that scary spinal cord injury. And, hopefully he can get back to his old self and do some things in the NFL. But at least for Clemson's purposes, he wasn't what they were hoping that he would be this year. And so we'll see if Adam Randall can step in and kind of be the next guy in a long line of really good wide receivers at Clemson.
Have you started reviewing Justin Ross yet for the draft?
I have not. I've watched a good bit of Ross just living here and watching a number of Clemson games. But as far as taking a deep dive on his draft profile, I've not. So I'm really curious to look at his film more in depth this year specifically. See, like, okay, why, he was cleared to play, but he didn't seem like he was as explosive as he was as a freshman before that injury. And I'm really not sure what to think because I can't unsee what I saw as a freshman, dominating Alabama in the national championship game. And he was electric. I remember thinking like, man, I can't wait to draft this guy in Dynasty. And then just the wheels fell off. So I would love to see him get back to his old self, but I'm really not sure at this point.
Yeah, definitely. He's going to be one of the I would imagine gets drafted too, just because of the medical, even if he was cleared, people are still going to be worried about that. But if he could ever get back to that, I would not think in rookie drafts he's going to go very highly. So he could be one of those third or fourth round steals, like looking down the line, that could really, blow up, because we've seen, like you said, about this Clemson wide receivers, this, pass game for the Bengals. T. Higgins more than Jamar Chase was the was the star receiver, and it seems like they have a great 1-2 punch there, 1-2-3 with Tyler Boyd. So yeah, Clemson has had those type of receivers, the big receivers that have done well in the NFL. So it'll definitely be very interesting.
Yeah, and Ross is big. I mean, he's 6'4". He's a pretty good route runner. He was fast, at least at one point. He was really, really fast for his size. So we'll see if he can get that back. I think the combine is going to be really telling for him, and just what kind of draft capital he gets. If the NFL believes in him, I'm definitely going to believe in him. So, again, even back half of the second round, I think the upside there for a swing for the fences that's a pretty good pick.
Definitely. So now we will. Is this not? There we go. All right, we're going to talk about Treylon Burks first a little bit, and then we'll look at the video. Analytics, very, high up there, high dominator. We'll see. He's an athletic freak. He's still, I think, learning the wide receiver position, but he's, increased his play each year. As you see, he's gone up in targets, receptions, yards, touchdowns. They use him on some running plays. So I know some people have, mentioned with the, increasing of Cordero Patterson and Deebo Samuels that he might have some of that type of role. And another thing that is always hard for me, I don't know for you, but especially between Garrett Wilson and Treylon Burks, Garrett Wilson has had by far the better quarterback play. So that's something I always have a hard time looking at because, if you have a worse quarterback, he's not going to see the field when the passes might not be as good. So it's hard to, kind of compare players that way. Do you ever have a, kind of problem of scaling that?
Yeah, the interesting thing is I think they're just very different types of players to begin with. So even, despite the quarterback thing, Burks is actually a little bit, he might be a better suited for having worse quarterback play because his catch radius is just enormous. Like throw it anywhere and he's going to find a way to catch it.
Definitely.
But Wilson is such a technical route runner and creates so much separation that he kind of makes it easy on a quarterback too, just in a different way. It's like, anybody can hit you when you got 5 yards of separation. So they're totally different players physically and in terms of their strengths and weaknesses. I mean, it's almost like yin yang, like they couldn't be more different as prospects, but they're both such good players.
I totally agree with that. And I think especially wide receivers, that's the hardest because when you're trying to rank, all these prospects, it's not like we separate them from like the big physical ones to the speedier, yards after catch guys. You put them all together. Whereas I feel like for other positions like running backs, you kind of talk about the bats and you talk about the scat bats, but for wide receivers, they're all kind of just lumped together because so many can be in the game at one time. But you're totally right about that. They're totally different players and good at different aspects. So so there's that. So let's go ahead and pull up the video. Okay, we'll go ahead and start. And I haven't written down what the plays are, so I'll give a little what to look for before the play, so you're not totally caught off guard. So the first play, it's a lot. To be totally honest, most of these plays are either crazy catches by Burks or his crazy yards after the catch. That's pretty much, mostly what he did at Arkansas. So this first one is a very nice play, yards after the catch. So roll this. It's just going to be a short little pass out to him right here. They have good blocking out there. You just see the size and speed that he has.
Oh yeah.
Just going through the defense.
And then he stiff arms this guy at the end. Yeah, I remember this play from studying him.
Yeah.
That was a really fun one. And he's got plays like that all over his tape where, either they run him on a reverse or throw it to him on a little bubble screen and he can absolutely take it to the house. He's always surprising defenders with his not just his top speed, but his burst. Like he gets up to his top speed really quickly, and they take what they think is a good angle on him, and he just leaves them diving at the air. And he's really fun to watch after the catch. So, people are talking about the next Deebo Samuel, and I don't know that there is one, but he actually got used that way a lot in college, and it's like 6'3", 220
Yeah.
version of Deebo Samuel, which is scary, but yeah, he's a freak.
I will say before this year, because I did a review after 2020, just kind of comparing players, and two of those were Treylon Burks and David Bell. And after the 2020 season, I actually liked David Bell better just because I thought he was more polished and everything like that. And I thought Arkansas I'm going to be honest, I thought Arkansas used Treylon Burks wrong because since he is this big receiver, I was saying, get him the ball down the field where he can make plays. But as you saw this year and in that play, they just got him in space and he just showed his speed. So, he kind of proved me wrong on that. And I definitely, think very highly of him. And we'll see this next play. It's actually going to be an attempt at a jump pass by KJ Jefferson. It is covered pretty well, but then he ends up just throwing it up, and Burks makes a nice play, a jump, in a jump ball, with contest. So we'll just watch this here. So just up, he jumps, and he has a defender undercutting him. We'll see the replay here. It's blocked at first, and then he just throws it up. So,
yeah, right here you can see it well. He's good at high pointing the ball. You can see it on the close up. Go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry, Brandon.
Oh no, you're fine.
Yeah, this is contested catch is one of his strengths, right? So, he's got a huge catch radius. He's 6'3". His hands are like so big they had to special order gloves for him. He's got these long arms. He can jump. And there are a lot of plays like this all over the tape where the quarterback gets in trouble, throws it up in Burke's general direction, and he's just mossing people. So it's definitely one of his big strengths.
Yeah, so definitely. So this next play, I believe, is another yards after the catch play. We'll just show it back. Yeah, it's just. Oh no, this is actually another jump ball. So, we'll show the replay. Another high point.
Oh yeah, that was one of his better ones. I mean, yeah, you paused it in the perfect spot.
Yeah, I did. So I could probably never do that again. But you just. Yeah, look at that. Look at the high point. There's nothing a defender can do there. That's the great thing with him. And I think while he, we'll talk about this later, but I think he needs to learn some more technique and, work on some, his route running. But this part, if he goes to a coach that knows what they're doing, they're going to be able to get him the ball in the red zone, the ball deep, kind of. I think similar to what Seattle was able to do once they got DK Metcalf kind of going, his first year, because the little big thing was with him too was, not the greatest route running, and some people questioned, his agility and everything. But when you're that big, you can just catch the ball, and point the ball. It's definitely something that you can't teach. So it's a skill that. Is great for him. And I don't think he's great at contested catches, but I don't think that's because he can't get separation. I just think, when it's there, he can do it. But there's other wide receivers. I think one we will talk about later that both of us are not as highly on just because they can't get separation. But yeah, for him, I think he can get separation and he can do this.
Yeah, I agree. And I appreciate that you said that because I think a lot of people see contested catches like this one and they get that N'Keal Harry PTSD and they're like, oh man, he's just a contested catch guy. I don't want anything to do with him. But that's actually not true. Like Burks does a pretty good job of getting separation, even, without being the most technical route runner in the world right now. Speed is another way to get separation. Like when you can run in a straight line and separate a couple yards from a guy, or when you can threaten with your speed and then change into a different direction and they had to overplay because they were scared of your speed. And so there's definitely a lot of plays on Burke's film that are not jump balls like this, and he is wide open and he's able to be dangerous after the catch, like we already talked about too. So yeah, I don't think he's N'Keal Harry. N'Keal Harry wasn't this fast, and I think he's more fluid laterally than DK was coming out. Like,
I
there's
agree.
a ton of upside here, and if he gets with the right coach and the right quarterback and he gets developed, like, the sky's the limit for this kid. I'm not saying that this is the most likely thing to happen, but his upside is like he could be the dynasty wide receiver one if everything hit right, which would be something to see. But he's got a huge ceiling.
No, I agree. So we'll move on to the Nets play. Another, they just throw it out to him. They actually do a very good job of creating that space. He comes out, he goes straight up field, breaks a couple tackles, gets gets the first down. So, another great play. And I think these Nets two are two crazy jump ball plays, I believe.
Well, yeah. I know which two you're looking at, and they're one right after the other. So they're both against Ole Miss, and he does these two consecutive plays in a row. So,
yes.
Yeah, you can go ahead and roll it. Yeah, so that guy gets mossed. And then that same DB, number 5 for Ole Miss, he gets matched up again the very next play, man-to-man with no safety help. The quarterback's like, I know what to do. And it's, get mossed again. So in 2 plays, he gets like 70 air yards and catches both of them. It's insane.
And one thing I look at wide receivers too is how they catch the ball. If, like, for him, he definitely snatches the ball out of the air. That's why he's so great in those jump ball situations. He doesn't wait for the ball to come to him. He goes and gets the ball. He boxes out the players. And like I said, I mean, there's not very many corners in the NFL, if that can defend this. It's as long as it's thrown up, in a general area where he can make a play on it, he's going to be able to do that. So, but like I said again, this is all he is. It's just these are like some of the most impressive catches that he makes.
Yeah. You mentioned the boxing out. I don't know if you've got any plays here that show it, but he's really physical too. Like he's not afraid to use his hands and even get away with a push off sometimes. But OPI never gets called, so it's cheat code. But I just love, like, he's big, but he's also not afraid to use the fact that he's big. Like, he plays bully ball. He swats the hands on his routes and he boxes people out. Like you said, he's a good run blocker. Like he'll pancake people. So he's got a little bit of nasty to his game, and you love to see that when a guy's 6'3" and 230, that he's actually able to use that and be physical. It's a good trait for him.
Yeah, one of like the first things that I put down, I have, when I watch the tape, I have a Excel spreadsheet, and before I kind of give like numerical grades, I just type like my notes. And one of the first things I typed is like nasty blocker, just like how he'll attack players. And because big receivers, you think they should be good blockers all the time, but some of them just don't care. But he like attacks and stays on blocks. And I know for fantasy production that really doesn't mean as much, but coaches like that kind of thing. So that's definitely going to get him on the field at the next level.
Yeah, those things that don't show up in the box score, it matters fantasy because it keeps you on the field. If you're a terrible run blocker and the coach doesn't trust you and you end up in the doghouse, like, all that stuff matters for sure. So,
yeah. So this Nets play, it's like it's the same play back to back, but the first one you're just going to see the speed and see where you were talking about how him being physical and just getting off the line. So I'll just play it. So he just burns the guy, and they're not going to catch. And look, he's stumbling as he's running, and he's still like they can't catch up to him.
Yep.
So yeah, this is where they're going to show it. He's able to get off the line very easily. Uses his hands well.
Yeah, it's good foot fire and a nice
Yeah.
release to get outside leverage. And then, yeah, you can see him kind of throwing the stiff arm, like, get off of me as he's running that route.
Yeah. There's another one of the Turk plays, and another, it's not much, but it's just how he catches the ball with his hands. He doesn't allow the defender to hit him to make him, to bobble the ball. He just catches it quickly with his big hands and then, gets it easily at that. And this play was crazy. This is the toe tap near the sidelines. So I think I have a couple replays of this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that catch was insane.
This is just insane that he caught it, but he was able to get the 1 foot. In the NFL, you need 2 feet, but still, it just shows his crazy balance, his hands,
body control,
a little bit of everything there.
Yep.
So,
for sure.
So we'll go ahead and so let's stop sharing that right now. Okay, and just talk about Burks a little bit. I kind of just asked you what were, you thought his strengths and weaknesses were. A lot of it's kind of the same. Size and speed, crazy, yards after the catch, physicality, contested catch. And I think we both agree his route running could use some work.
I think he needs to diversify his route tree. Because the routes that he was asked to run at Arkansas, he got pretty good at. Like he ran a really nice slant route. You saw on that last play against A&M the really nice release to get the outside leverage on the go route. So he showed some good route running, but he just wasn't asked to do very many different routes. Like I saw him run post routes, slant routes, go routes, and like bubble screens. And that's literally about it. So I think he can be a good route runner. He hasn't been asked to do very much. So we'll see if he can diversify a little bit.
Definitely. Think, we're going to see the complete difference between him and Wilson route running. But Burks sometimes kind of would round out routes, not, sharp cuts. I think slants, he does do a good job of that. I think he sells those very well. One other thing, and I hope he gets an experienced quarterback that can work with him on this, kind of when there's a scramble or the play doesn't go as planned. I don't think he moves with the quarterback as well as, like Garrett Wilson can. I think he kind of just like stands there and waits for the ball. And I would like to see him kind of work across the field, kind of, like with Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams, they kind of do.
Yep.
And but I think, he's still young, so obviously that's something to learn more of. I am actually surprised he wasn't better at that because, with KJ Jefferson, he would scramble a lot. So I would think that would have been something more that they would have kind of done. But still,
I saw a few plays where he did that, but not a ton, like you're saying. So, yeah.
All right, let's get that here.
You showed the analytics. I love that analytics and film kind of match up, when the guys checks both boxes, and that's the case for Burks too. So
yes, so let's go back here. All right, there we go. Stop. Okay. So Garrett Wilson, not his analytics don't, scream off the page like Burks, but still very good. Dominator, 27%, and he had much more weapons at Ohio State, so he had to share a lot of the target share and everything. Still had a nice target share of 23%, and then you see same thing with Burks. He's increased everything every year. Targets, receptions, yards, doubled his touchdowns. This year, I'm actually surprised when I put the numbers in for the rush attempts. I thought he had more rush attempts, which I think that's a part of his game that he can do on end arounds and those type of things. Not as much as, say Debo or anything like that, but I think that is a part of his game. They could use him. because he's very good with yards after the catch, and I think he's a very fluid athlete. So definitely think there's room for that at the Nets level.
Yeah. Yeah, he's different after the catch than the guy we just looked at, but he's dangerous just in a different way. He's not surprising people into taking bad angles because he's so fast or has so much burst, but he's way more elusive. Like he makes guys miss, and I'm sure we'll see that when we dig into the film here in a second. So
yeah, so okay,
his lateral agility is nuts.
Oh yes, definitely. Oh, that's good.
And when you're 6 foot 190, which is what Wilson is, it's a lot easier to have great lateral agility than when you're trying to move 6'3", 230 pounds side to side. So, yeah.
So a lot of a lot of these clips for Wilson aren't necessarily just the huge plays, kind of like Burt's were, but it's more just showing his route running and his overall ability, that what he brings. So this first one was against Penn State. I thought a very nice route he runs. He's down here at the bottom, so we'll go ahead and roll it. It turns out that they're playing a little bit of a zone, but he just gets off of the line. His release off of the line, just using either stutter step or just his quick, in and out movements. I just think is so good.
Yeah, he's really elite at that, like release, route running, those kinds of things. He's just so polished. He's one of the better route running prospects I've studied in years. So totally agree.
So
on
this
that.
next one's going to be yard after catch. It's a similar play, to Treylon Burks, where they just get the ball outside to him. Nice cut, and you even see he stumbles. And I don't know if I have a clip of it, but his spin moves are really good. When he's out in space, he probably doesn't get enough credit for how he is after the catch, but I think he's very good in that aspect. Definitely different from Burt's, but he's very, very elusive, as you were saying.
Yeah, elusive's the word. And you saw on that one, like he made that dead leg cut, just left the defender looking silly, and then he made that spin move. So yeah, he's more about making guys miss than about just like outrunning guys, but he's dangerous in a different way for sure.
Right. So I believe this one, he makes a good adjustment coming back to the ball. Yeah, so he comes back to the ball up here, catches it, and he gets nailed there on the sideline. And this will show a better close-up. I think he's talking about learning more to kind of extend routes to get open and everything. I think Wilson is very good about that, and I think Ohio State teaches their receivers that well.
Yeah, scramble drill. He comes back to the quarterback, gives him an option, makes a nice catch on the sidelines in traffic.
See him at the top of the screen. Oh, this one isn't even a completion, but I just thought his cuts were just amazing on this play. So let's roll it. It's actually thrown out of bounds, but
yeah, so he's going to jab in. Defender's going to turn his hips, and then he's going to go back outside again.
Yeah, so wasn't a completed pass. Obviously the defender, recovered enough, but I think that just shows his, his elite route running, and just his change of direction is just crazy with that.
Well, and he sells everything. Like you saw that slant. He kind of looked like he was going in for a deep post. I guess slant's the wrong word. Deep post, and it looks like he's going to the inside because he sells it with his whole body, like his hips, his head, his hands. Like, and the defender bites, turns his hips, and as soon as the defender turns his hips, Wilson's going the other direction, and it's like, whoop, just kidding. I wasn't going inside. I'm going outside, and he gets defenders in the spin cycle, and it's fun. It's fun to watch because he confuses guys.
Matt, are you still there? I kind of lost you for a second.
You still there?
Yeah,
I think
can you hear
my
me?
internet might have. Yeah, I hear you. I think my internet might have cut for a second. I was seeing some spinning circles instead of your face, but
Oh
I
no,
think
that's
we're
fine.
back now. So
Okay, yeah. So I want to display. Let's see if there's yeah. This he made some great adjustment on this throw. I actually noticed on a lot of these passes from Stroud they are not in the right location. So he makes great adjustments. On throws that are thrown behind him, like here. It should have been more out in front of him. And let's go back here.
mhm.
So we'll just watch this again, and it comes yeah. So he's going to be open across the middle, which if he's hit with the ball, he can, run after it. But it's a little behind him, but he still is able to make the catch. Another good
Mhm.
move. He
Another
has to
great
come back.
route.
Yeah. So we'll see it on this angle also. But
Mhm.
just
That's
nice
amazing
nice
that he caught
adjustment.
that. I mean,
Yes.
the fact that he caught that, I mean, just body control for days.
Right.
So, and he makes those kinds of catches look easy, and they're not easy at all. He's got great hands too. Like he's another one, like you were talking about with Burks, where he's not trying to like bounce it off his body. He's like
Yeah.
out away from his body and catching it with his hands pretty consistently. So,
Well, it looks like some of the highlight tape got mixed up a little bit, so I'm going to have to do a little searching. Let's see. Did that, or I picked the wrong video. Hold on just a second.
no problem.
Well, I mean, this should be it. I think. Let me see if this is all Penn State, then that's the problem. Okay, there we go. All right. I think. Okay. This is. Okay. All right. This is another great play yards after the catch. It's against Akron. I think he gets 50 plus yards. Another play
Mm-hmm.
where they just get the ball out to him and where he really shows his speed and his cutback ability. So I'll go ahead and roll this.
Yeah, I covered this one on my channel. I think this is yeah. So right here, he stiff arms him like into the grave. Just incredible stiff arm. But
Yeah.
I think this was actually where I highlighted a little bit of a weakness for him, which seems weird on a 50-yard play. But I think just the fact that he gets run down here against, I mean, it's against Akron. He's got an angle, and if you roll it like right there, it's just green field in front of him, and you think he's taken to the house, and Burks would have, but
Definitely.
so if we're nitpicking between prospects, it's not like Garrett Wilson is slow, but he doesn't have that same top end speed as Burks or even Jamison Williams. He's got that great lateral agility and he's got good burst and acceleration, but once he gets up to that top speed, like guys are running him down. He's not, he's getting that 50-yard gain instead of that, 70-yard touchdown, which makes a difference. I mean, you'll still take a 50-yard gain all day, but a 70-yard touchdown is a lot more fantasy points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I did notice a couple plays like that where, Burks or like you said, Williams. So I obviously don't think Garrett Wilson's slow, but he
Right.
doesn't have that elite speed. If he had that elite speed, I think he would by far be, I still have him as my number one receiver, but
Mm-hmm.
he would be by far, it's really close between him and Burks just because of Burks' athletic ability
Yeah.
and speed.
If he had 4.4 speed, we'd be comparing him to Justin Jefferson. And the fact that, I mean, he's probably in the mid 5.5s, somewhere like that. I mean, he's not slow. Look at a guy like Keenan Allen, who's an elite route runner, kind of like Garrett Wilson. Keenan Allen's one of my favorite comps for Wilson. He's even slower. He probably runs I think he ran a 4.7 40 coming out of college.
Yeah, that's why he dropped. That's why he dropped to the second round, I think, because I think a lot of people really liked him, but he just ran slow. And that's another thing. A couple of the Slack channels I'm in, I've been talking about this, just how they're. I think it was brought up because of Cooper Cup, how people are tracking, game speed rather than just the 40,
Right.
because some players are just faster in game, to be honest, how often are you running in a straight line all the time?
Yeah,
it doesn't happen a ton.
for sure.
So.
Yeah. So I mean, Keenan Allen, I mean, who cares what his 40 was, right? He's Keenan Allen. And I think Garrett Wilson is that same type of player. It's like, if you're consistently getting 5 yards of separation and you're wide open and, target monster and your quarterback's best friend, it doesn't really matter if you can run 4.3. Like 4.3 would be a nice little cherry on top, but yeah, I mean, he's going to be a really good player. I'm not worried about him being too slow for the NFL at all. Just nitpicking between a couple of really good players. So
yeah, just running this play. And, this is another one. He made an amazing catch, and it was not placed well at all either. He runs a nice route wide open. He has to spin and turn in the air. I think he shows great adjustment to the ball, as we've talked about. And so I've heard a couple of people talk about his hands, and I have, he did have some drops, but I don't know about you, but I don't have any concerns with that.
No, I think I saw I studied in depth, like multiple games, probably 6 or 7 games for him. And I might've seen one drop. And even then it was would have been a really tough catch. So that's not a concern that I have. We'll talk about a guy a little bit later on in Jamison Williams, who I think has a little bit of bigger concern in that department. But Garrett Wilson, I think, some of the catches on his highlight reel are insane, where he can just reach out away from the frame of his body and pluck it out of the air. He's got really strong hands to me.
Yeah,
So.
and I don't necessarily where everyone gets their numbers for drops and everything, but my biggest thing has been it's such a, in your perception, if you were to consider it a drop or say it's like a bad pass or something, some people consider if they get their hand on it, then it's going to be considered a drop. So that's what I've always argued. It kind of depends where you get those stats from to kind of see that, unless you watch every single throw like you have. So, that's always been something that I've kind of thought. So
yeah, not all drops are created equal. That's for sure. And I look for if I see a drop, that happens even to the best players in the NFL. Jamar Chase, I think, led the league in drops just because he got targeted so many times this year. But he was still a stud for fantasy.
definitely.
So, when you see drops, that doesn't bother me necessarily, but what it does is it makes me look at the film every catch and say, okay, how's his technique? Is this something that seems like it was kind of a one-off, it happens to the best of them, or does this seem like his technique's going to cause more drops in the future? And I don't see any issues with Garrett Wilson's technique. So he's catching with his hands, he's catching away from his body pretty consistently.
Yeah, this is another play. This actually the ball is late by the quarterback, but another nice route. Makes another nice catch out of bounds. So we'll roll it. The defender stumbles, but he still makes a nice move on him. Nice catch there. This is from the other angle. He had to wait a little bit for the ball, but he still makes the nice catch there.
Yeah. So body control, hands, and this kind of goes with body control, but the ability to do that toe tap on the sideline, those are some of the things that really stood out to me as strengths for Wilson. He's not this massive person, like 6 foot 190, but he made a lot of really good contested catches and spectacular catches because of his great body control and his great hands. And he works well in tight spaces, so you see a lot in the red zone. Like he creates more separation than you think he should when he's only it's 2 yards from the end zone, and he gets 3 yards of separation, and you're like, how did he do that? And then the quarterback throws it to him, and he can do those toe tap catches, and he's just really good in tight spaces, I think. So
Yeah, and I think something I noticed also was in a lot of those contested catch situations, obviously you'd like him to come down with it, but I saw a lot of times where he got pass interference calls. So even when he isn't catching it, he's putting the defender in a bad situation where they have to keep him from catching it. So I think that's right. Obviously, he's not as good in the contested catch as Treylon Burks because Burks has that huge catching radius. But still very good. So this play is he's going to just run a slant and has nice yards after the catch. Just run it, like you've talked about in videos. He just plants and makes the defender think he's going outside. Then he cuts inside on the slant, catches it there, makes 2 guys miss, gets extra yards there. So nice play there. I think this the other angle. Yeah. He's just so smooth and all of his moves, I think.
Yeah, he's got efficient footwork. He's not like cutting just to look cool, and like when he cuts, he's cutting with a purpose, and really smooth.
Yeah, so that's all of that. So now we can just talk about finish our talk on Wilson. What do you think are his strengths, and what is your main or what are his main weaknesses?
Yeah, so just to kind of recap, I think route running and separation is a huge strength. He's elite at it. He's always open. So that's huge. That makes a guy, I hate to even use safe because nothing is ever safe in fantasy football, right? But he's about as safe a prospect as you can get because wherever he goes, he's going to get good draft capital. He's going to get good opportunity. He's going to get open. So, and then body control and hands, he makes these catches that are outside of his frame, these really difficult catches. And yards after catch, we talked about his elusiveness. And then the only weakness, he's such a complete prospect. The only weakness that I really see is that he's not that freak athlete where he's going to be, 6'3", or he's going to be running a 4.3 40. He's an above average athlete. He lacks elite top end speed. And that's probably the only real knock on him as a prospect. It kind of limits his upside a little bit. Like when you look at guys in that mold, like a Diggs, Keenan Allen, and Amari Cooper, who are great route runners, but not elite athletes, you see those guys like kind of hanging around on the outside of the top 12 in terms of wide receivers. And you don't usually see those guys finishing as like your top 3, like a Tyreek Hill or a, Justin Jefferson or some of these guys that have that freak athleticism. So of course Kupp was an exception to that this year and blew all that out of the water. So I don't know. I kind of view like Wilson is the safer prospect, and I would be surprised if he doesn't spend a long career as a low-end wide receiver 1, high-end wide receiver 2. And Burks is a little bit more of that, like, reach for the stars. He could be elite of the elite. Like, we could be talking about him similarly to how we talk about guys like A.J. Brown and DK Metcalf now. Or, I don't know. I feel like Burks, I'm not going to say he has huge bust potential, but there's more paths to it not working out for him. We'll put it that way.
I think everything you just said is exactly how I feel. I think Garrett Wilson is more well-rounded, with his route running and everything. Like you said, I don't think he's going to be a top-end fantasy player, but still a very good one. Whereas with Burks, I think you're going for the ceiling for him, and with Wilson, you are playing it a little more safe, for what he can do. There's always a chance of that bust, but I just think, let me just say, we're going to kind of talk about this, about possible good landing spots for them. As long as it doesn't go to someone that completely doesn't know how to use him, I think he's in good shape. But if he does go to someone that just wants that traditional wide receiver, he's not that right now. He's not going to be able to just line up and beat corners, with varied routes and, good route running to begin. You need to be able to get him the ball in different ways. So,
yeah. And Arkansas did that. Like Arkansas was running him on the reverses and the bubble screens, and he actually ran like 70+% of his routes out of the slot this year, which is unusual for a guy that's, a big guy like that. Whereas Wilson and Jamison Williams and all these other prospects play primarily on the outside. Burks actually spent most of his time in the slot this year. So that's one interesting thing on him as a prospect. It's just kind of unique. I'm not sure what to make of it, but he spent a lot of time as that big slot guy.
Yeah, definitely. So are spots that you would like for either of the receivers?
Yeah, so obviously, if you could get either of these guys connected to a high-end quarterback, where also they're going to have opportunity on the field, that's the dream, right? But that's true for any prospect. Like, let's say Rodgers stays with the Packers, and one of these guys gets drafted to be the wide receiver 2 there, or Cowboys, and they let Amari walk because they cap space, and they bring in one of these guys to be the number 2 across from Lamb. Chargers, Burks coming in and filling the Mike Williams role would be pretty great. I think
that would be a dream. That would be a dream. I'm a huge Herbert fan, even though I doubted him when I didn't think he was going to be good. But after watching him a couple years, I think that would be great, because Mike Williams is good when he's out there, but he just gets hurt so much and misses so much time. But yeah, Burks, that would be a great spot for him.
Yeah. So obviously, if they land with a high-end quarterback, high-powered offense, first-round draft capital, like that's the dream. But who knows? More likely, probably they end up with somebody like the Browns and have Baker Mayfield throwing them the football, or go to the Lions with Jared Goff, which, at least there's a clear path to opportunity, which probably if somebody's taking them in the first round, they're going to have a chance to get on the field right away, which is the most important thing. So I think Wilson is maybe a little bit more equipped to handle a situation where the quarterback's not as great, because he's just going to be open, and it's like pitch and catch. Even a bad quarterback can usually throw it to a guy who's wide open. So, but at the same time, Burks has that really forgiving catch radius. So I don't know. Burks, I think it's more about coaching than about quarterback. Like, he needs to go somewhere with a coach who's going to know how to use him. And Wilson, to me, almost seems like situation proof. Like, I hate to even say that, but like wherever he lands, he's going to get open. And I feel pretty confident in Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, when you did say one of the teams I actually wouldn't mind him going to is the Browns, just because I know Baker was horrible this year. I've changed my mind on Baker, dropped him down, but I don't think he's as bad as he played this year with the injuries. I think, like I said, I dropped him. I've dropped my belief in him a lot more. But one thing I've said between Burks and Wilson, I would rather Wilson go to the Browns, because Baker more kind of he's always liked Jarvis Landry. The great route running. Knowing where that guy's going to be, getting the ball with timing. And I think that, like Odell Beckham, it's kind of like just throw it up to him. I don't think Baker does well with that, because I don't think Baker is as talented and doesn't trust that type of receiver, and that'd be more in the Burks mold. So it kind of be, Wilson could learn Jarvis Landry, kind of be that, something like that. I think too, either receiver, if they would go somewhere like the Raiders that need wide receivers, it's kind of like that. you want, a team that is needy for a wide receiver. But we've seen with the Eagles that doesn't always work. With Jalen Reagor, that didn't work. They needed receivers, and he just, I keep on saying, please don't let the Eagles draft any more first round receivers.
Yeah. Hey, Devontae looked like maybe he's going to buck that trend a little bit. Devontae Smith had a good rookie year, but yeah, I mean, Arcega-Whiteside and then Reagor, it's pretty bad. So
yeah. So we'll just end with any other wide receivers you think could be taken in the first round or possibly taken ahead of these two.
Yeah, so I'll mention two. One is Jameson Williams out of Alabama. He obviously, not going to bury the lead here. He tore his ACL in the national championship game. He's not going to be able to run at the combine, which would have really helped a lot because he would have turned some heads for sure. And he's not going to be ready for the start of the regular season either. So I don't know how far his stock is going to fall. I've seen a lot of people saying he's probably still going to be a first round pick, which would be interesting. I can't actually remember a time in my life where somebody tore his ACL, wasn't healthy before the draft, and still got picked in the first round. Can you think of anybody? I don't.
I think Willis McGahee got picked in the first round.
But, and that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
So, I mean, that's a long time ago. So
yeah,
I think I remember because I think the Bills, because it was a big deal, the Bills picked him and pretty much said they were just going to redshirt him for a year because they knew he wasn't going to be healthy. But that usually makes you at least drop to the second round. And that I'm more on the side that he's going to be an early second round pick. But I could see him going in the first, like near the back end of the first round, because all those teams, are playoff teams that probably can say, hey, if he misses the first few games, we're okay with that.
But before the injury, I mean, he was being talked about as the first wide receiver off the board by a lot of people, not because he's necessarily the best receiver in the class, but the NFL just loves speed so much. And this guy, I kind of did bury the lead a little bit. I haven't mentioned he probably was going to run a sub 4.340. I mean, he makes Burks look a little bit slow, which is impressive. So Jameson Williams is super fast, and he's a little bit of a slight frame. He's only about 190 pounds at 6'2", but I mean, that's about where CeeDee Lamb is at. He compares physically a little bit to CeeDee Lamb, and nobody thinks CeeDee Lamb's too small. So, yeah, he's actually a better route runner, Jameson Williams is, than he's given credit for. Of all the guys that I've studied so far, and I've gotten about 8 or 9 deep in my rookie study for wide receiver, he's probably the second most polished route runner that I've studied after Garrett Wilson. Both Alabama and Ohio State are known for cranking out really good wide receivers. They have great wide receiver coaches there, and he got to play for both. So he's actually pretty polished. He's really, really fast. He's the guy I'm making my next YouTube video on, so check it out. But my biggest question about him is actually his hands. He's got a pretty bad habit, especially on low passes. Like when it's a high pass, he does a good job of getting his hands up and catching it with his hands. But when it's a low pass, he's wanting to like scoop it into his body, or like have it bounce off his body and then catch it. It's not great technique when the ball is low. And it did lead to some drops. And I saw that pretty consistently. Like when I saw the one drop, I was like, okay, I need to watch for this. And I watched a lot of games of Jameson Williams and pretty consistently saw him like underhand, like trying to body catch it. So that's probably my biggest concern with him. But he's got a ton of upside because he is so fast and he does get separation. And so yeah, he's a guy that, at least before the injury, I could have seen going before these other two that we've talked about. And then the other one I'll throw out there, Drake London out of USC. He's a guy that I'm personally a little bit lower on. When we talk about the N'Keal Harry PTSD and not being able to get separation, I see that way more with London than I do with Burks. When you watch his film and his highlights in particular, there's never any separation. Like I can't think of a single play I watched where he like ran a route and got open. Like it's always contested catches, and the comparison is to guys like Mike Evans. They're both 6'5" and great red zone targets. So I'm not saying that Drake London is for sure a bust, but I have some fears about him. If he doesn't land in the right spot with the right quarterback who's willing to throw it up and has pretty good deep ball placement, um, he could end up disappointing a lot of people, I think. But I have seen first round buzz on him. I've seen him go earlier than Burks in some NFL mock drafts that I've looked at. A lot of people I respect in the Devy community have said he's their wide receiver one. I just don't really see it myself personally, but I feel like it's worth a mention because I've seen so much buzz about him.
Yeah, pretty much you took all out of my mouth about Drake London. I think short to intermediate passes, like I think he's really good at that because they also find a good way to get him the ball. And when he gets moving, he's a big guy. But yeah, I don't see the Mike Evans comparison. I mean, they're both big receivers, but I think Mike Evans gets way more separation. It's way faster.
Mm-hmm. People
Yeah,
say Drake London is fast. That's where the game speed thing comes in. Like I'm curious to see where Drake London runs as a 40, but he doesn't look fast to me on film. Like he looks like he's kind of stuck in mud. He doesn't change directions very well. Looks kind of cumbersome. Like he even when he has like good technique on his routes, like he doesn't lose the defender because the defender is just so much more agile than him that it's like, oh, you faked me out. Great. I'm still going to recover because it took you so long to change directions. So yeah, game speed is a concern for me for Drake London. He just doesn't look that fast on film.
I agree. And what I noticed too, another thing I want to talk about Burks, I think with Wilson, he was very good finding spots in the zone and zone coverage. I think that's another thing Burks will probably have to work on more. He did get better at that this year. With London, I think London's really good at that, like just finding the spot, catching it. And I'm going to be honest, those Pac-12 defenses, when I watch the tape, look horrible. Like he is wide open so many times. And, I mean, if players are 10 yards away from you, yes, you're going to be able to get 15 yards after the catch most times. And I just don't know about him. But I will say, this just came to me, Drake London, system that I think he might work for is, I know it's crazy because Mike Evans does play there, but for the Bucks, but especially if they don't bring back Godwin, because Arians likes those big receivers that like to block and gets him a lot of those little short screens and everything like that. Yeah. So I think a team like that could possibly, or even if they bring back Godwin and then, can put London in some of those situations because, Evans is getting older. I mean, one other player I don't think will be drafted ahead of Burks or Wilson, but Jahan Dotson. I'm actually way higher on him after watching his tape than I was before that. I really like him and, what he can do. And he seems like kind of what the NFL is going towards, that yards after catch guy, that, and he actually is a lot better at contested catches than you would think. He has very good hands. He makes highlight one-handed catches quite a bit. And, Penn State would move him all over the field. Don't think he's going, top 15 or anything, but I could see him the back end of the first round.
Yeah, he's a guy I haven't taken a deep dive on yet, but I felt like as a box score watching, don't do that. It's not a good way to scout. But I will say that like every week when I was checking college box scores, I was like, oh man, Jahan Dotson again with 100 yards and a touchdown. Like he just seemed like he just produced week in and week out for Penn State. And I'm excited to get to dig into his film at some point in the near future. And I've heard good things. I feel like he's going to be a polarizing one because his analytical profile is not great. So he's going to be one of those guys that like the film guys love and the analytic guys are like, I don't know about that guy. So I'm sure that debate will rage for the next couple of months. But
oh yeah, it's all when it gets closer to draft time, there will be more heated debates about that. I don't know about your process, but my process at least, I'm like 80% film, 20% analytic. So I do, a percentage, I put all the analytic information in and take, an
Mhm.
average and percentage of that. And then I do the film, and do that. So there's a little bit of both. And I will say sometimes that ends up making the prospect lower than I think they should be. But, I want to be true to what I think you should look at both film and the analytics to,
Mhm.
truly gauge where a prospect should be.
Yeah, I think they're both important, and I'm a film guy at heart. It's kind of how I got started in Dynasty, and um, just have always loved watching film, like watching the game. That's why we play fantasy football, right? Watch the game, and it's entertaining first and foremost. So I'm a film guy, but I do think I agree with you. Analytics is important, and you can't just take one and throw the other out the window. So, um, yeah, I completely agree with everything you just said.
All right, yeah. So I think that'll do it. This has been great going over that. Other than me losing where I was in the film breakdown, but still we got through it, and a lot of good talk. And I'm looking forward to those videos. So everyone that's listening, make sure to subscribe to Matt's YouTube channel, because that's going to be great content going forward. So thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me.